kule broke, suni male sonko. Amengena dog, sizo panda kuzingonsa. Got $1 billion tree. Yeah, I need $1 billion tea. Yeah, yeah. So just kule broke, suni male sonko. Amengena dog, sizo panda kuzingonsa. Got $1 billion tree. Yeah, I got $1 billion tea. Yeah, yeah.
Welcome to Frank Bro Talk. Today we're going to be on the serious side of things. I'm going to be talking consent, rape, and statutory rape. We know that what the law says and what we as a society think or believe are two different things. And here with us today to talk law and make things easy for us is Chwayita. Welcome to the show, Chwayita, and thank you for blessing us. Super. She's going to introduce herself, Simazi, and then we're going to carry on.
Alright. So, hi, Dingo. What English do I use?
No, you can use Xhosa or English, any language you feel free with.
Oh, okay. Chwayita Mathiso, and I'm an attorney, and I'll try as hard as I can to make it easier for you to understand those concepts.
Super. So first and foremost, we're going to talk about, or rather define the word, which tells what is concerned, what is statutory rape, and what is rape. But more interestingly, I would like us to start with what is consent.
Okay. So consent is permission, just at the very basic level. It's permission. It's when a person gives free and uncoerced, voluntary permission to act sexually, so to sex or to sexual acts or whatever those things are.
So it's when you say, do you want to have sex? And the other person says, yes.
And that is consent.
That's consent.
So by law, who is allowed and who's not allowed to give consent?
So, so minors are not allowed to consent to sex. Persons under the age of 12 are completely not allowed to consent to sex, so they can't say yes to sex because they don't understand what consent is and what they would be saying yes to. So those people are not allowed to have sex, and then there are people between the ages of 12 and 16 who can consent to sex, and then obviously adults can consent to sex, and people with disabilities, depending on the kind of disability, cannot consent to sex.
So if you don't have the mental capacity to consent, then you can't consent to sex.
So from the ages of 12, so yesterday I just turned 12.
Yes.
So I can consent.
You could theoretically be able to consent depending on your capacity. It depends on the child's capacity to understand, one, what it is that they are consenting to, and the consequence of what they are consenting to. So if you have a child that's miraculously able to understand the thing that they're consenting to, in this case, sex, and what the consequences are of having sex, and what sex is, the actual sexual need,
Okay.
then theoretically they would be able to consent. But the thing is, there's a sliding scale when the law deals with children.
But deal with them differently.
Differently, yes, according to the kind of 12-year-old that you're talking about. Obviously, 12-year-olds are 12 years old.
Yes.
Their brains are not developed enough to deal with certain concepts. And so it would be difficult for a court to say that a 12-year-old, and the law is there to protect a 12-year-old child from engaging in anything that is overwhelming or harmful to that child. And so it would be difficult for a court to say any or some sexual behavior or conduct is permissible with a 12-year-old.
Absolutely not. But as you get older. So the law treats you differently as you get older. And obviously, children mature differently
Yes.
and at different rates, and they show you indicators of how they are mature. Like you get very, very mature 17-year-olds or 15-year-olds or 10-year-olds. I mean, I make my 12-year-old make me coffee. He's mature enough to make me coffee. But he's definitely not mature enough to make porridge. He would burn the house down.
Yes.
So you check the level of the maturity of the child to check whether this child can consent to this, that, or the other.
And that goes from 12 to 17 years old. And now, I'm just going to make an example. Now, a 17-year-old, right? And an 18-year-old that just turned 18 yesterday. They have sex. Now, the court is going to treat the one that just turned 18 yesterday differently as an adult to the other one that is yet to turn 18.
So you could, a 16-year-old can consent to sexual conduct, right? So if they are 18 and 17, they are fine.
Oh, okay.
If they are 16 and 16, they are fine. If they are 17 and 16, they are fine. The law doesn't really want to what is this thing? It doesn't want to put in Manda in English, but it although it wants to protect children from being exploited sexually by others, but mainly adults.
Oh,
right?
I see.
People who have an intention to harm and injure children sexually.
Okay.
So it doesn't want to stop children from learning and exploring and experimenting.
With their body.
Although it puts like concrete bars as it is. Okay, between 12 and 16, these people have limited capacity to consent.
That's it.
And then from this age to that age, they can consent fully. The people who actually make the decision as to whether or not this crime should be prosecuted or whatnot, they have to sort of kind of think about the impact on the children consent to in this context. So if the child is 17 and the other one is 16, the prosecutor will make the decision, okay, it is a prosecutor or not, and what's going to be the impact on these two children. And the prosecutor has to also think about the best interests of these two children.
And does it matter if the 16-year-old is a boy and the 17-year-old is a girl?
No, because they're both minors. It just matters that they are both minors.
And again, as let's say I'm the parent of the boy child, I can also press charges for...
Yeah, although, I mean, I mean, as a parent, I would deal differently with the issue, but if the parents of these minors decide they are going to open cases, the parents of all of the minors involved, whether it was, I've seen on social media where children participate in group acts of sex, all of the parents of all of those children, they can open cases against all of the other children, whether it's one child or two children or whatever.
And whether it's a boy or a girl.
Whether it's a boy or a girl, or boys and
Because,
boys and girls and girls.
Because again, as per our introduction, that there is what the law says and what society understands or accept. It's mostly now regarded when it comes to minors or statutory. We're going to get to the meaning of that. It's always the boy child that is in trouble and not the girl child that is in trouble. Or rather, let's say it's always the boy child that it gets arrested for these.
Sometimes boys are vilified, but it's not always. There are, I mean, the parents of the boys as well, because the boy is also a child in this circumstance. They're also able to counter, or if they can also just institute it themselves without even the girl's parents instituting first. So they can open some
case
kind of
first.
case. Yeah.
Why some kind of case?
No,
Why
it's not,
not a
it's,
case?
It's not. The reason why it is some
Kind. It's not because of DT. Okay, there's a different kind of case DT. All of these parents can open cases.
Okay.
So the reason why it is some kind is
Ah.
just because I don't believe that's the right way for a parent to deal with this kind of issue. I don't think that it's a criminal justice issue. I think it's more of a society and a parenting thing. Yeah. Because I mean, imagine criminalizing abantwana bathandanayo and experimenting and all of those
You
things.
see, that's another thing. That's another thing. Does the court take into account that they both agreed to this?
Yeah. Okay, so there are two different kinds of sexual offenses which relate to children. So there's the consensual kind, and the non-consensual kind. So if these two children consented to having sex with each other, and both
the
of them,
parents decide they're going to open charges against both of these children, these children would be charged with consensual sexual offenses. And then if one of or both of the children are saying that no, it was unconsensual, then they would be charged with rape.
Okay.
Because the minute there's no consent, it's then rape. When you're forcing someone to have sex with you, then that's rape.
Okay. And then let's define rape now.
Yeah.
What is rape according to the law?
Okay, so rape is really just the lack of consent to sexual acts, right? To penetrative sexual conduct.
And again, I read this, it doesn't have to be vaginal.
Yeah, it doesn't have to be, you don't have to penetrate one or a specific organ. It can be penetration of any
The nose,
part
the mouth,
of your body that can be penetrated.
as long as it is in a sexual manner.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, my son didn't consent, but had sex with this girl, right? Coerced by this girl. Yeah, prove me, show me that you're a man, or show me that you love me, type of scenario. Now I can then open a case
Yes.
for non-consensual, even though they had sex.
Yeah.
For my boy child.
Yeah.
And the girl child is going to be arrested, or their parents are going to counter open a charge.
Well, your boy will be the victim in that story, right? So as the victim, you can open a case on behalf of your child, or your child, depending on how old. How old is the boy?
13.
Okay, 13. They can't open a case on their own, but yeah, you will have to help them to open a case, and they will say that they have been raped.
Okay. And then, so now let's define what is statutory rape and what it means.
Okay. So statutory rape is having sexual relations with minors below a certain age, so age 16 and under.
Where does a 17-year-old fit? Because from what I understand, you can vote from 18,
Yeah.
you're an adult from 18. From what I hear now is that you're a minor from 16, you are protected at 16. What does a 17-year-old fit?
everyone who is under the age of 18 is a minor.
Is a minor.
And everyone who's 18 years old, 18 and 1 day old is an adult.
Okay. So, but with the definition
you
of
can consent to sex from the age of 16.
okay,
So from 16 above,
you can
you
consent.
can consent to sex.
But you cannot consent with someone that is above 18, because that then by definition that becomes statutory rape.
It's
Statutory rape if you are over 16 and the other person is under 16.
Okay. So if a 19-year-old and a 16-year-old have sex,
Yeah, that could be statutory rape.
but if a 19-year-old and a 17-year-old have sex, then it's not.
Then it's fine. Yeah.
But the 17-year-old is not an adult.
Yeah.
He can't vote
But they have capacity to consent to sex.
with even if it's a 25-year-old.
Yes.
Oh.
Inappropriate. But
17-year-olds are in trouble. They can't vote, they can't have a driver's license, but yeah, you're an adult, you're with us.
yes, it's terrible and it shouldn't happen, but it can happen. Like in law, it can happen. It's not.
Now let's take I'm a 25-year-old, okay? I'm at an establishment. Let me not name anyone because they might be in trouble. I'm in an establishment. The establishment says no 18-year-olds allowed or no 21-year-olds allowed. And then I happen to meet this lady. She's there as well.
Yeah.
And then I have sexual relations with this lady after this. And then later on, now I'm arrested because as much as they look 25-year-old, they are 16 years of age. Their parents are opening a case against me.
Mm-hmm.
But I met this person, one, at an establishment that says no 21, no under 21s allowed.
Mm-hmm.
Am I still going to be arrested? And what does the law say or protect me against that?
Yes, you can be
Charged with statutory rape if the girl turns out to be younger than the age of consent to give legal consent, and that's the end of that.
And she said that, yes, I also wanted to have sex with this
So
person.
which then changes what kind of offence that you'll be charged with.
Okay.
We will not be charged. We will be charged with consensual.
Statutory.
Sexual offence rather than rape.
So guys, let's ask for IDs. Let's ask for IDs.
Exactly, that's what you need to do as an adult person. You should be aware that people lie and people look different, and it doesn't matter whether a person looks young or they look old or what. What you need to make sure is that you've put in all of the things that you need to protect yourself in order for you to walk away from whatever experience safely. So as an adult, you know
that when I'm going to have sex, I need one to have sex with someone who has the capacity to have sex, which is the mental capacity. They can give consent. And then after that, you put in the protection that you need. So it doesn't make sense for a 25-year-old who has 25 years of experience and at least 7 years of experience in sexual contact. If you come from 16, you don't know what is safe to do or how to establish your safety in a situation.
But let's be clear. We mean by that what the law regards, because what society is a different thing.
What does society say?
All I'm looking for is someone.
For a 25-year-old.
All I'm looking for is someone that looks the age and that talks the age and no sex. Whether they're 16, they're not. So as the way type of thing. I know it's not right, but
anyway, also in addition to that, uyambona about right, you act mature,
yes.
So you establish okay, this person can consent.
And yes.
And now as because
yes.
It should be easy for you to say, it must be easy. This is what you need to do so that you establish is safety in relation to yourself. Happy. Finish and glad. Ati omye dina 18. That's what you need to know. If you are going to engage in sexual behavior with someone, why wouldn't you ask them for that information? To make sure that you are safe.
It's kind of awkward and not part of.
And then people got other questions which relate to sex, like so obviously we're going to use protection, but what's your status on all of the
STIs, HIV, that type of thing. No, yeah, Muzi age, and then the person says, yeah, I'm 18.
And then to EPI. Because I've never made PTI because they are at an establishment where only people who are 21 and over go to. And obviously,
I I get in and I'm not asked. I get in these places, no one asks me for an ID, and sometimes they turn me away, personally, because I'm this height and I look this young. I have to produce my.
I also face the same issue of I also have to produce a proof sometimes.
But then you get to Ayaka who are tall, look old, they just slip in. Even though they're 17, they go in, no questions asked.
And then it's your duty as an adult. As an adult person.
It's duty by law.
Duty. No. It's not just by, it is by law. Why? Mm-hmm. But at the same time, because that's what adulthood means. It means taking responsibility for your actions. So part of the responsibility of being an adult is to check whether his man is like your man, his man is Grooming.
He produce ID.
Long to umature, okay, umature.
But sober enough to make contact.
Exactly.
Sober, hey.
Oh, do they
have
the capacity to make
at that time?
And because some at this establishment, and at the time where they knew from Elena, you're going home with one another, they were sober. But by the time you leave, you're talking to a different person now.
So now I need
drunk.
Now I need new consent.
A person who's drunk cannot consent because they are drunk. Depending on the sober, will consent. But later,
yes.
And then go open to banana later. And consent. Now you have to wait until they're sober.
But now everyone in her circle knows what is going on with me.
Nothing to do.
Yeah, and then we get in the car, we get home, and then vibes happen, and then we start kissing and all of that. So, but yeah,
then consent.
So they can turn around the following day and say, hey, I'm going to Lingenetu.
Yeah, because I was drunk. There was no way that
I have a text.
Decision.
Unike number yakho namthumela WhatsApp, hey ndim lo sanodibana, yeah Sean. We're gonna go home together and I want you in this manner. Yes, I want you to in this manner. Speak to you later.
Yes.
Now
but at the point where they are drunk, they can't consent anymore.
But who drunk work on one are different. Maybe you get drunk in one glass of wine, and I get drunk in a bottle.
Yes, risk. Because drunk work on one are different. Yes, that's true. Owako drunk might be manageable for you, but Owamo drunk might be different. And when I wake up the next day to realize, oh my God,
where am I? Who's this?
Then when I'm to take a risk, now you need to manage it, you know, because when the person wakes up and goes and realizes, okay, no, I'm not supposed to be here, and I couldn't have consented because I was drunk.
Okay, but doesn't this then open up a door for extortion? Because we hear about a lot of cases whereby guys are in this situation, right? Whether now, let's not talk now Undu is opening up a case and saying, but if you give me so much, I'm not going to open a case, money-wise. So doesn't that part of the law opens up that door for extortion? And how does the law deal with that?
Okay, so in terms of a person's ability to consent to sex while they are drunk, the law is standard to okay, if you reach a particular level of drunkenness, you can't consent to sex. And when as the person who takes the risk of engaging in sexual conduct with the person that is drunk, you are taking on the risk of exposing yourself to criminal liability because you are making okay, I was sober enough to make this decision. Okay,
yes.
So when you were sober enough to make the decision to have sex with a person who's drunk and cannot give consent, you are sober enough to face whatever the consequences are.
So
That's what the law
babe
says.
shushu so bayithuke ngoku it's a different case. Nami ngizawuvula ngoba silele nami
Nami ngingakwazi ukhonsenta senza loo nto. It's a factor that will be taken into account by a prosecutor who...
So now I can open a case against you,
Yeah.
since you're opening up a case. Now I'm just
It's
going to
not
repeat
since usenoyenza wena on your own, nami ndisenoyenza on my own. If so,
but
I
kaloku ndithi bana I wake up and then ngivulele case. So
Yeah.
now hayi ngonjani or hayi nami benginxilile ke let me open a case against.
Well, yes, you could do that, but izoba court that has to decide, which account of what happened is actually believable.
Okay. So again, now let's talk rape. Right? Is it possible? Because I know society, it's not possible for abantu abatshatileyo to be raping each other. And even when I'm in a relationship with you, sex is one of the benefits of the relationship. Now, on this particular day, whether you mad at me, whether you're having your monthlies or you're not in the mood, I want sex, right? And then I happen to have sex with you, and then the following day you open up a case.
When you say you happen to have sex, you mean coerced?
Coerced or
rape?
How would I rape my partner?
If your partner does not consent to sex, then it's rape.
Oh, okay.
And that's really the bar. That's the thing that determines whether this kind of sex or this kind of sex is rape or not. So if there's no consent, then it's rape.
Let's say I touch you, try to get you in the mood, and then and then that is coercing, right?
So if do I feel like I have to?
Yes, let's say you
I
feel
pressurized,
like yes.
Or do I feel intimidated and threatened?
Let's say I just get on top of you and then without hurting you
Also,
in any
if we
way.
are then obviously that's rape because there's no consent.
Excuse me.
So if you influence me in a way that indeed eventually I actually give consent as the partner in this scenario, then it's not rape because eventually I gave consent. But if throughout the act itself I don't give consent, then it's
and how rape. So can someone give consent without saying yes verbally?
They can, but it's best to establish verbal consent every time.
So by law, how can Undu give consent without saying it?
The thing that makes it very difficult in sexual cases or sexual offences cases is that sexual abuse or sexual crimes in relationships are so nuanced. It's very difficult to know where that line ends because it's the victim's experience of the occurrence, right? So, and it might be confusing for...
sorry guys, that's load shedding coming back.
It might be confusing in some instances, but it's not as confusing. The only thing that you need to establish is consent. A video of someone who was explaining what consent is, and they were using the analogy of making tea. If you offer someone tea and they say yes, that's consent. If you offer someone tea and they leave it on the stand and not drink it, although they consented to the tea, they don't want the tea because and then the video goes on and says you can't serve someone who's sleeping tea or someone who's drunk and pass out tea, and it's such a brilliant way of actually explaining this thing. And you can't make someone drink tea.
Yes, that's forcing
tea. So I was with tea, okay. And there are times where you're going to get annoyed because they
They
took
put it
the
there.
tea and then didn't use it.
They took me home, now they don't want to use me.
Exactly. And it was such a brilliant analogy, but it really is like that, Kuti. At every stage of, because I mean, sex is a I don't want to get into the details, but it's a process,
Yes,
right?
yes.
Until you get to the completion.
Yes.
And so at each stage of
You need
the
to.
process, you need to establish consent.
Consent.
Do I still have consent?
Oh.
Or consent do I at this point? Or say at the establishment I had consent, now we're in the car, you're sure you want to go home with me? So that they
And unfortunately,
they can make an informed decision. Actually, it doesn't work for me. When you go by 10, go it's already 12,
Yeah.
so rather I go home. And then once you get to your place, are you sure you're still with me? Are you sure you want to share the bed, the couch, the thing?
Now I'm not Now
But
I'm
it's
tired
your
of this. I'm tired
responsibility.
of, why are you asking me all of this? When are you sure type of thing? Now
Yes,
the
you must
ladies are
make sure
annoyed.
that you have consent, so that you don't end up in a situation where the person says, well, when you consented, but that I changed my mind.
Now undikhulule impahla, now ndamkhulula, now I must still ask again.
Or you
Are you
should
sure?
I take off your pants? Yes. That's what you need to do. As an adult person, you need to make sure
Now
that
the
you're
clothes
covered.
the clothes are gone now. It's 5 to sexual encounter.
And then
Now
are you still sure?
that I must put it in.
Yeah, those are the things. Are you still sure that you want to continue in this way? And the person must party yes throughout. I don't know. Yes.
The negotiations.
Exactly. Until you get the yes, the affirmative yes, let's proceed.
Yeah. And this is
But it's not like
it's a duty of the guy.
it's not the duty, it's the duty of everybody involved
Okay.
to make sure that everybody involved is consenting. This is not difficult, it's not something new, it's not something that is cumbersome, it's not
But it sounds like it.
it's not.
Because now the
If
first
you are
I
able
see.
to relate sexually, you should be able to relate verbally. But okay, yeah,
I see it.
this is why contractors, when they make you a contract for a phone, they ask you a million times, are you
Yes.
sure you want to do
Yes.
this? When you say yes. Have you read the terms and conditions? Yes.
Even though you didn't.
Or even though, but Bafuna consent so that this person consented voluntarily and they understand the terms and conditions of this relation. And so this is what you need to do to establish all of your yeses until you get to where you want to be. And you are protected at the end of the day.
And this is someone that I bought a whole case of Savannah for, bought a whole case of beer for.
The world and the moon.
And kuze kum ke futhi sihlelele namagenge, hey, I'm feeling you dog, this and that. But ke ngoku now e-finals are here.
Shame they consented to receiving the whole case of beer and the whole tray of meat. Ebesithi ewe ndiyayifuna inyama, ewe ndiyayifuna beer, but
Phelela.
ifike kwesinye stage of whatever the transaction is, I decide to she has the right, or he has the right to go, nope.
This is not happening.
No, I've changed my mind.
Yeah, but again, that is what the law expects of us. But with society, we view this differently, right? If if I take you out on a date, I am, what's the word that I'm looking for? I have these benefits that I need to get out of this transaction.
You're entitled.
I'm entitled, yes, I'm entitled. Even with my wife, I am entitled to sexual intercourse whenever I feel or whenever you feel. So if it's the other way, then it becomes a problem.
So basically, no one is entitled to anything in relation to another person's body.
Yes.
You're only entitled to whatever your body, what you want to do with your body. You're not entitled to, even if umuntu ngowakho, umfazi wakho, umyeni wakho, i-girlfriend yakho, i-boyfriend yakho, i-chomi yakho, you are not entitled to
whether yabantu have, because more there's these new things that people have friends with benefits and contracted friends with benefits. So let's say now we agree with, you know what, our relationship is gonna work, I'm not in the stage, or I have a girlfriend or I have a wife, and then you say, okay, cool, let's be now friends with benefits, and those benefits are sexual, right? So even that person can then turn around, even if I have text to say, no, nansi into uvumile ubaniza my friend with benefit, and the benefit is sex. So on that particular day, or that person can then turn around and say, I'm opening a rape case because I didn't consent on that particular day.
Absolutely, they can, because just because you have had previous instances where there has been consent, it doesn't mean that consent is automatic, simply because wake one consent
or
last week,
one.
or round one, or izolo, we just did half a round and go see like brothers. No, each time a person must consent. Everyone involved must consent. Just because they're your wife or your partner or your...
Or another thing, so even in between the round, they can turn around and say, you know what, no, I don't want this.
Absolutely.
We must stop.
Absolutely. Because it's with each one, but with each occurrence, you must establish consent. Like ukala enye ngoku, and then uqhube enye, then uqale enye, then uqhube enye, right? And with each of these processes, you find consent.
Even during the process, you need to establish consent. Like ngoku now, we in bed, we've already started to have the sexual intercourse. In the middle of it, I should be asking, Mana, are you sure you want this?
When you say, okay, so now we are in penetration.
Yes, we are in penetration.
So now you've established consent to the penetration.
Yes. 15 minutes later now, and
you are doing it.
Yes, we are doing it.
Because we form any consent to the penetration before it started. Yes.
So I must wait to climax before I get another consent.
Before you start, yeah.
Yes, let's say before we start, I've got consent.
Process.
Now we busy in sexual intercourse.
Yeah.
And
so the next intercourse, you have to establish consent.
Oh, okay. So within the 30 minutes that I last for, I don't have to have, but what I'm trying to establish, I don't have to have
penetration and consensual until the next penetration.
Oh, okay, cool.
The consent is for the duration of the specific act. So if I'm consenting to kissing,
just for
kissing for this kiss, and then can I have another?
Yeah.
Can I have another? Like you would say, I want this drink, can I have another? Can I have another? Each time you establish your consent until
like can I have seconds type of thing.
And thirds.
Okay. Sure. Now let's get to a scenario where yes, I'm with this chick again at the establishment, or actually I meet this chick at the mall. We start talking, and then there's an open space, and then I try to have sex with her, and I'm gonna overpower her obviously, and then she gives me a condom to say, okay, cool, this is going to happen, right? Here's a condom, rather use it. Is that still taken as rape, or that now giving of the condom is consent?
So she is being coerced to sex,
yes,
right? And because she hasn't consented to sex, the giving of a condom is not consent.
But why would she give me a condom if she doesn't want me to?
Because she wants to establish her safety. It's like umntu xa ezokoroba with a gun uthi inefomia. That doesn't mean come orochi just because you want inefomia.
Oh, okay.
Usarochi, but to try and make the situation less threatening, or trying to establish your safety, uchi this must happen as quickly as possible so that I can run. That's the situation that the victim would be in that scenario. As uchi, okay, this is what you want, because clearly you're acting in a way that is sexually violent, and you coercing her to take part in a sexual act. and you need to establish some kind of safety formula. So here's a condom so that I'm protected against disease. Trying to protect yourself against the disease doesn't mean that you are consenting to sexual violence, to the rape.
Oh, okay. And there's nothing the guy can say. No, I sit the animal, someone call up, we vibe. Now I felt to go to ya. A phone and I live in then one year la condom.
But the guy would be using that as an excuse.
Okay.
Especially to we want overpowering implies that there's a struggle.
Yes.
So
And another thing, because Satana ulanduka a rape with a violent act. Can a rape be a subtle act?
yes, it doesn't have to be violent. As long as there's no consent, then it's rape, right? So it doesn't have to be violent. It can happen, especially in abuse scenarios where the abuser is known and has a history of some kind of abuse and grooming and all of those things. It doesn't happen violently.
What is grooming?
So grooming is when a predator creates a condition or I'm trying to get to grooming. Okay, creates a condition for the predator to make usually children perform sexual acts or victimize them sexually and abuse them sexually. So it's when usually a person who wants to have sexual relations with children usually puts in things and establishes a kind of relationship where they have some kind of trust with the victim and slowly become familiar with the victim, and the sexual abuse graduates from one level to another, and at some point the victim is manipulated into making sexual acts and decisions. I don't know whether that's...
Now I'm conditioning you
Yes.
to be in a space or in a position where you can't say no.
Yes, you really manipulate a person into having sexual conduct, whether it's sex or performing sexual acts or different things depending on the predator.
What is the difference between rape and sexual abuse?
Sexual abuse is a broader umbrella term which includes rape.
Oh.
Right?
Okay.
So sexual abuse is some kind of sexual violence. And then, what did I say? Rape is some kind of sexual abuse. And then sexual abuse includes many things. It includes...
So I can rape you without sexually abusing you.
Yes. And you can sexually abuse without rape.
Wow.
Because rape is penetration, forcibly penetrating another person, right? And that's a type of sexual abuse. So
okay.
you can
So it can be a once-off thing, or it can be a series.
Yeah, I mean, like people who human traffic other people for sexual acts. Those are sexual. That's sexual abuse because those people are being used for sex, but not necessarily being raped by the trafficker.
The traffic. Okay.
Not necessarily. And the coercion to sex is not being perpetrated by
the abuser itself.
Yeah.
Okay. Earlier we spoke about, excuse me, we spoke about 18-year-olds supposedly knowing what statutory rape is or what consent is. So what is being done to educate them throughout so that when they get at 18, they know what they supposedly.
What is it supposed to?
No, I mean, at 18, a lot of 18-year-olds do not know. They would know what is rape, right? And how to walk away from it, or when it has happened to you, where to get help.
Yeah.
But they wouldn't be educated that they can be rapist, that through not getting consent or through the age thing. So what is being done to educate?
Well, I mean, and honestly, I don't know what the curriculum is Mugo at schools in relation to sexual education, but I know when I was in school, we had some kind of sexual education, which was rape. This is what rape is. This is what you need to do when you've been raped, and more or less what consent is. And I don't know at which stage, or maybe it was a thing that was concentrated more on educating girls about consent. This is what consent is. This is what's going to happen, and also the way that I relate to the topic is different from what men or males relate to the topic about, because it's just different ways of understanding the things. I don't know to what extent there is this kind of education, but I think that the tools are there, and there are many areas where people can get information if they want. And when you become an adult, this is the most important thing. The day you turn 18, I think we sort of kind of underestimate the kind of responsibilities that you have when you become an adult. I remember when I was at school, in high school, everybody, when you become 18, it's going to be hard because you're going to have to make these decisions and all of this. And you're like, when you're a kid, you're like, whatever, I'll deal with that when it happens. But it's really serious. Turning 18 and becoming a major has a lot of responsibilities. And the world assumes that once you become 18 years, in South Africa, but once you become an adult, you are able.
I love that you said assumes, but we do not give the tools to these people. And to say, Uti, okay, once you turn 18, this needs to happen. You have to have these type of information. This is what, because the only thing I knew even back then, before I turned 18, is that I'm going to be able to have a driver's license, I'm going to be able to vote. That's it. I didn't know that I must learn now consent, what is consent. Now I must ask people for their ID before we have sexual relations.
Yeah, that is very important. And what also is important, well, I mean, what's the reason why I suppose the world assumes that once you become an adult, you know these things is because at that age at the particular stage of your life, you should have been taught, one, primarily at home, about these things and these concepts, and two, through the education system, being taught about these things. So each stage or each grade of your education career is supposed to take you from one level of maturity and responsibility and understanding of how the world works to another. And as you grow up, you are supposed to be taught primarily at home, and parents need to take responsibility and make sure that their children learn and know what is required of them when they become adults in the world. And it's each parent's responsibility to ensure that they've equipped their children to deal with world things.
At what age are you going to be speaking with your... I know it's different.
So I have a 12-year-old and
son.
A son, yes, who's 12. And I think, and because of the work that I do and the way that I parent, I talk to my child openly about most things for his education and benefit, and so that he learns to use the right language for things. And also because I'm exposed to other children who are in the system, because I've heard many stories of many children who are already in the system, they have done this, they have done that. I've attended so many school disciplinary procedures because children experiment at school. And I know the importance of making sure that he understands what he is required to do and what, if things happen, he should do. So he knows, okay, if this were to happen to me, this is what I need to do. If I want to do these things, these are the things that I need to do in order to make sure that I am okay when I walk away from this experience.
So basically, we need to, because that's what I'm getting from this whole episode, is that we need to be safe and be able to walk away from this situation safely.
Knowing that you are covered and the other person is also covered.
That other person can then turn around on you, but as long as you know that
your own safety,
you know that if this should go left, I know I've done A and B and C for me to walk away.
And now it's easy. I mean, back in our day, most of us didn't have phones and our phones were dumb. Now kids have smartphones and they can screenshot and screen grab things, showing evidence of certain things. So it's easy to produce a record of what happened, rather than with us. When something happened escorally, you would, I know that kids are not allowed to have phones at some schools and whatnot, but you would be asked to go to the principal's office and then and then but you wouldn't have a record of what happens. But now kids have phones, they use phones, so they can easily say, no, actually, these are the conversations that we've had.
So it's best to have these contract or negotiations on phone.
On some kind of record.
So that you can then say, this is where you said that I'm your boyfriend.
Yep, and we are going to do this at this time, we're going to meet up, so that you know, okay, if this goes left, you are covered. You have proof that there is consent, and then obviously there's certain things that can be argued and certain things that cannot be argued. If you force someone, that can't be argued. But if it's ambiguous, that actually happened, whether you want to establish some kind of truth of what actually happened, you will have some kind of proof that, okay, this is what happened and this is as far as the proof goes, at least. And then as when back we're safe.
But now, what is difficult is with this whole thing is when someone is either married to this person or have a long-standing relationship where my family knows you, you know my family, we attend each other, even though we're not married, we attend each other's traditional ceremonies, birthday parties and all that. And when it comes to the issue of rape, now the victim needs to think about how the damages that this is going to cause. Even if now the parent, or let's say now I am a stepfather to your daughter and I'm providing for this, and then I happen to then force myself to the child. Now the parent has to now think about that. Where we're going to sleep, what's going to happen. Are they now with the law, are there things to assist or to help someone in that situation?
Well, there are. There are, but it's especially with that kind of scenario where there's a relationship between the victim and the perpetrator, and there is some kind of power imbalance, or there's some kind of support that the perpetrator gives to the victim. It's difficult. This is one of the leading, I think, reasons why women in particular, it's difficult for them to actually come forward and report these kinds of abuse or abuses, because you depend on this person.
Yes.
In many other ways, and then they are abusing that power because they dominate you, I don't know, financially or whatever, and then you then find it difficult to actually bring that forward, because obviously you have to think about I'm going to lose the financial support, I'm going to lose the protection that I have from this person, I'm going to lose my family, it's going to change the family dynamics, maybe there are children involved,
Yeah.
children are going to lose their father, so what do I do, what's the right thing to do? And people struggle with this, and it's a big struggle, and by the time that they come up and report these abuses, they have already made some decisions into how they are going to manage that situation. In law, though, well, with the justice system, there is very little that government does in terms of supporting the victim. They will arrest the perpetrator, take him to jail, and take him through the justice system, the criminal justice system, which ends up with the person in jail. But they're not going to give you financial support.
What you're going to be losing from that person.
Exactly. They're not going to give you financial support. They're not. There are things for children and certain victims, trauma, counseling, and all of those things are things that the social department can give you, but it's very limited. It's not that they can support you holistically. And then the whole system itself is also like it's quite gruesome, and it's difficult for victims. You have to be prepared when you're a victim, because the whole from reporting of the crime all the way to the trial, it requires a lot on the person's emotional integrity.
Oh, and that's just an episode. Okay, this is where we're going to end it for today. But before we close, I asked the crew if they have some questions. Excuse me. Does anyone have a question?
What happens in a situation where if the lady is drunk and then she makes moves on you? Let's say you tips and you're not that sober, but you tips and she makes moves on you, and you get into the mood, you end up having sex. She opens up a case. What happens to you?
And you are less drunk than her.
Yes.
And she's more drunk than you.
Yeah.
Yet she's the one.
And she initiated the sex. And so it depends. Each case is dealt with according to whatever happens in that particular case, right? So what I said was that a person who's drunk cannot give consent. That's what the law says. And then if you are found guilty of the crime, if the court says, okay, given the information that I have in front of me, I have established that you are guilty of a crime, which is rape, because you have engaged in sexual conduct with a person who couldn't consent because they were drunk, then they have to determine what kind of punishment fits the particular situation. And if the people are below the age of 16, both of them, there's a separate system which caters for people who are younger than the age of 18. So it depends. It depends on what can be established. So the prosecutor will have to establish whether or not a crime has been committed, given that information, and then two, whether they want to prosecute this crime or they want to use a different system depending on what has happened. So yeah, I hope that is helpful.
Do you guys learn at school about consent?
No.
And about rape?
No.
Okay, cool. All right, that's where we're going to stop it for now. Sure to keep a lookout on our social media. Should you want to have your say or have any questions, and we'll see you in the next one. Peace.
Pedos on the beats, gonna put you on